let's move forward real quickly to the U.S. Senate race.
Mhm.
Anything new? There's the Boustany issue. There's uh, anyway. Take it over.
The standing issue to me is front and center right now.
Really?
And what's kind of fascinating from, I guess, a political observer's perspective is how it's been handled. So right now you have Congressman Boustanys. At a time that Congressman Boustany is introducing himself to the state and going on air and so forth, all of a sudden you have this explosive charge being detonated against him. It's too early in the game for me to give a really good assessment as to whether it'll help or hurt him. A couple of things I think will help him, though. Number one, his wife did give a vigorous defense of him right away.
Okay.
Number two, the fact that the appearance, and I'm going to be very careful about what I'm saying because this is still a work in progress.
Sure.
The appearance that not only John Kennedy, but his campaign manager kind of wanted to draw a lot of attention to the scandal because even though these charges came from a book that's about to be released, the worst thing that you could do as an opponent of Boustany is make it look like you're gloating and trying to draw attention. Mm-hmm. And when you send emails to reporters saying, well, maybe you ought to take a look at this, or you talk about the scandal, your opponent's scandal, and describe it in lurid detail, which is basically, doing an indirect attack. That to me is something I was kind of surprised to see coming from the Kennedy campaign. And one of the things that I've been reading about this in terms of the psychology of why he did this is perhaps he perceives that Boustany is breathing down his neck. But the thing is, though, those kinds of responses to me are a reactive response and not a proactive response. I think what should have been done is say, I don't really know much about what happened, but our thoughts or prayers are with the Boustany family. End of sentence. You don't go speculate like he did.
Yeah, I wrote a column about this yesterday, and it's a short column. And so, basically, I didn't know if there was any blowback. I was just responding to the way I felt about the letter. And I'm talking about Kennedy's letter.
Yes.
And honestly, truly, I thought that it was horrible. Okay? And the reason why is that, you can, like you said, you can say, look, I didn't do it.
Yes.
Not send the links, include the links. But he not just included the links, but the image that he was, with the link that you could click on was so big.
Yes.
That you go, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then you say at the very end that my wife and I, wish the best to you and your wife. Sure you do.
Yeah.
That blows your credibility right there.
Right.
So did your campaign, in fact, conspire, to send, to promote this?
Yeah.
It just didn't make any sense. But Kennedy has not made sense to me for about a year, quite frankly.
Well, to me, it's mid-September. He needs to be turning up the volume on his media expenditures. In other words, how much longer do you want to sit on that stockpile of cash you have? Because I see this as a 5-person race, two on the Democratic side, 3 on the Republican side. Boustany and to a lesser extent Fleming, they have the wherewithal to wage a competitive statewide campaign.
Right.
And I just think that the way that the campaign reacted to the Boustany scandal, it just reeked of gloating to me.
Well, you have the Vitta scandal, and you have the people who were trying to push the prostitution thing under the rug,
right?
Saying, hey, it doesn't make any difference, and all that. So how that, and Kennedy was supportive, and of course Boustany was supportive. So how that may play in, it's going to be very, very delicate.
Yeah, but this is happening at a tricky time for Congressman Boustany because, of course, he's known to voters. But I also think in politics that depending on how you handle it, you can get sympathy if you're the victim of something that happened. I'll give you a perfect example of something that if you give the appearance of gloating or overreaching, it tremendous blowback. I'd like to go back in time to 2002 when former Senator Wellstone had died right before the election. It was literally like a week or two right before the November election. The Democrats held a funeral and a wake and all that in his honor. The Democrats made the mistake of using that funeral to launch a platform to say, hey, let's use Paul Wellstone's. In other words, they gave the appearance of trying to manipulate the event for political purposes, and it blew back on them in a tremendously bad way to the point that there was polling done that showed that Walter Mondale's support dropped from I think it was a 10-point lead to practically nothing in the space of days because there was a tremendous voter distaste at the overreach by the Democrats. A lesser version of that analogy, I think, is applicable in what just happened with this scandal because I think that the jury's still out on if it's going to help or hurt Congressman Boustany, but having your wife defend you is certainly a good thing. And having an opponent who's appearing to try to gain advantage from it is certainly a good thing as well. So we'll just have to see how this all plays out.
Sure.
That's kind of my impression.
Last question. Are you seeing anything or hearing anything on the ground in terms of the presence of David Duke in terms of the U.S. Senate race?
Not very much. I can give you an anecdote. So there's a couple polls I've conducted that have had David Duke's name in it. And I can tell you that in the rural parts of Northeast Louisiana, the Duke was in single digits.
Right.
And so I think I had mentioned in an earlier appearance on Bayou Buzz that 5 to 7% was what I thought he would get.
And that's what another poll did recently. He had him at 6%. Surprisingly,
right.
He had him at 6 and Fleming at 6 and Manis at 4.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that poll is you look at the relative positioning of the Fayard and the Campbell numbers. I don't exactly believe that that's the case, but, like I said, I always like to look at polls taken together rather than getting excited about one. It's particularly a poll that's been released by the candidate. Those are automatically suspect, particularly if they, let me put you this way, if you had put Campbell by Fayard's percentage and Fayard by Campbell's percentage, the numbers would mostly have been credible. But for something like this, showing Campbell that far back in the pack and Fayard that far ahead, well, you kind of have to, be critical of, the numbers and consider them against other publicly released polls.
But I'm talking about the poll that was that Hayride actually came out with. Is that the same poll that you're referring to? I don't think so.
This one I'm referring to is the Anzalone poll.
Okay, so that's the poll that Fayard Camp had put out.
Double digits and Campbell in single digits.
That's. I didn't get that poll, but
it was
I don't get the numbers either. Really,
yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, listen, I know you got to go to work, and so do I. And listen, I really thank you. We will put this up on Bayou Buzz. We will put it up on YouTube. Great followings. And so, listen, thank you, and we'll check in. How about next week? I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to get really interesting, fun, and who knows what's going to happen next.
The part I'm looking forward to is when the early voting starts and I get to opine on what's going on in the various states. Because while you have those states I mentioned on September 23rd early voting, once you get into early October, you're going to start to have Ohio and other states join in. So it'll get kind of fascinating.
What a race. What an election. Absolutely. Take care of yourself. Okay?
Okay.